Welcome to the September 18th, 2025 Greysheet Rare Coin Market Report. Patrick and I have probably been a few weeks too many since we've done our last report, but we're just so busy doing a lot of things on the backside of this company and keeping track of market trends and things like that, especially gold and silver rocketing, that we just haven't had a chance to catch up. So Patrick, it's great to see you.
Yeah.
Excited to hear your thoughts on what's going on in the market, because we haven't even had too much of a chance to do that. So we're just going to do it live. And so thanks for joining.
Yeah. Great to be here. Time is flying by. We're already heading into the fourth week of college football. My second favorite team and your alma mater have both fired their head coaches. So that's I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. I mean, bad right now, but it's been it's fall and it's a
It's
fun time.
every year I have the same problem with football, because my favorite team is obviously Virginia Tech for college football, and then Miami Dolphins on the pro football side. And usually they're in sync, which is usually badly. They're playing badly. And this year, but usually they give me a few weeks of hope before the disaster starts.
Oh yeah.
They might lose the first game to a top ranked team very close, but now we lost to ODU. I think everything's terrible. We fired our coach. Frankly, I'm just going to go back to watching tennis. I just can't stand. I'm like the only guy in the country that doesn't enjoy football at the moment.
Yeah.
So
No,
what
I
can I
get it.
say? Yeah, and for you, I know I feel sorry for you and your Bruins.
Yeah.
Um, you know, we'll all get our act together sometime. But I think this NIL thing is a real problem. And is college football much different than pro football even now? Maybe colleges today is like pro 10 years ago,
Yeah.
and pro has jumped the shark.
Well, it's just constant change. That's the only
Right.
constant is change, and it's going to take them a while to figure it out from multiple levels. So
I agree. I mean, like if you're kind of an A minus or a B program, let's say Virginia Tech has somehow a star player, isn't he just going to jump as soon as he can because he wants to go to a top school, like a top 10 school
well, it's
immediately,
fun.
because the future's not there.
Well, it's funny you bring that up. The coach got fired on Sunday. Monday morning, I just happened to see a story that the best recruit for this incoming class, who's in Virginia Beach, he plays at I think Green Run High School, decommitted.
Sure.
So it's like, of course.
Contract broken, different coach,
Yeah,
different coach.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah, it's an interesting time, and better time to focus on coins and paper money than it is to focus on football for
Yeah,
me. So
exactly.
anyway, let's jump in and see how things are going and talk about this market. We're fresh off the heels of the ANA show. It's been a few weeks, and then of course there's been the auctions now happen after the ANA. So I think you can talk to that for a few minutes and tell us what your thoughts are on these auctions.
Yeah, I mean, you've had, of course, these are outside of fun, these are like the main auctions of the year, right? And so you have your handful of $1 million coins. Heritage sold some really cool gold patterns for 2 million plus. Stacks had their usual, selection of very impressive coins. They had a lot of early gold from the Springfield collection and a few others. But I think overall, the auctions were very steady. Um, Nothing really outstanding, but nothing really, at least that I've seen, fell through the cracks in a big way. I mean, certainly some coins sold cheap, but nothing, I think nothing precipitous, huge drops. And I think that's a little bit driven by demand. You have this large base of demand that I think that is moving over from, and we'll get into this a little bit later, people moving over from buying bullion into more classic coins just because of the prices of classic coins look more attractive because of how expensive bullion is, um, which
Sure.
I think is a huge driver of what's going to happen for the rest of this year, for the next 3 months, for sure.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I agree with you. I mean, if gold is 3,500-ish an ounce, then everything looks reasonable. Like there's so many great rare coins. I mean, you could put together the majority of the Barber quarter set in MS66 under $3,500 a coin. So it does make coins look cheaper. And I think we will talk about how bullion is affecting specifically bullion related coins, I think in a few minutes. But I agree. I went through some of the preliminary auction data that I was seeing from Stacks and Heritage, and I agree. I don't think there's any shock waves. I know everybody came back from ANA very frothy. ANA tends to be frothy, and So if it's a good market going into A&A, it gets frothier. And then I always, when I was a dealer, when I was buying and selling, I always found A&A to be a little bit of a trap because what would happen is I would go, the whole market's, like I said, frothy. Everybody's excited. It's A&A. It's the last huge coin show of the year. We've gotten, it's kind of the apex of the year, and then we trail off and there's just a few shows left like Whitman Expo and a couple others. And so you're like, okay, I got to load up, I got to buy all this
Yeah,
inventory because I'll never find inventory again. And then what happens is you get home and you're like, oh, it's August. Then everybody's getting ready for school and it's not
right.
that exciting and frothy. And so, and now with the auctions happening the week after the show, didn't always used to be that way. With the auctions after the show, there's a lot of money now continuing to be spent. And that's really what is the litmus test for the market, not
Yeah,
who bought what at the show. And the auctions have gotten to higher average price points, so we're
yes,
dealing with more expensive coins, and that's not also indicative of the typical market buyer. So what I saw in looking at the numbers was, okay, yeah, we held the line. I didn't see too much go down, as you said. I haven't seen a dramatic upswing. I think that type coins in general, the kind of type coins that are under $2,000, let's say 500, they're strong. I think you can't find butts dimes in MS62 or barber quarters in
yeah,
MS64. Those coins are really, I think the sellers are really finding it very easy to sell. And that's great, right? And they're
yeah,
also finding coins that are $100 that are interesting, easy to sell. So that's good. And all these new marketplaces like Whatnot or even eBay, they're doing
yeah,
well with all that stuff. So I think that's strong. Um, but there's still problems in the market. One of the weakest areas was seeded dollars. So it was a big seeded dollar set at Heritage. It was I guess the market just didn't love the quality, and
yeah.
NGC graded and probably not top quality coins as the discerning seeded dollar people are. And so that didn't do so well. Did you see those numbers?
Yeah, I did. I did. And
Mhm.
I was just gonna say exactly what you said is like, buyers with paying these prices, buyers are going to be picky. As
Mhm.
average
Mhm.
prices go up, it forces them to be picky because they have less, ties up more resources every purchase that you make. And one thing that's interesting that I think about auctions too, especially how, as you know, the third, fourth, fifth sessions of these auctions are just thousands of coins in like that, like you say, $500 to $2,000 range. But for an average collector, it costs a lot of money to buy a coin at auction because you got to buy the buyer's premium, then you got to pay the sales tax depending on where you're at, then you got to pay the shipping. I mean, it's it's expensive for guys to buy coins at auction. So I always think about that and how that affects how much people spend.
Exactly, exactly. I mean, it's not easy. It doesn't really favor the guy who just wants to cherry pick a coin here or a coin there in the auction. If you're going to buy 50 coins at the auction, or try to, you're way better off, right? The scale
Yeah,
works for you. We've talked about having a podcast specifically about pricing. We've invited some people waiting to hear back, but how we get to pricing and how we use auction pricing is a topic for another day. But you're right. You're right. It's not easy, and it kind of. So I guess in some ways you're saying it favors wholesale because of the efforts made, and then wholesale dealers don't have to pay sales tax and things like that.
right.
So
And
these
you
have
can arrange to
become.
pick them up, all that type
Mhm.
of stuff.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, yeah. As far as I saw, like the seeded dollars were interesting and worth talking about for just a minute more because I had some people call me say, "Listen, I mean, those are an aberration or this and that," and don't. And I did adjust some levels, but what's happening in seeded dollars is a very good example of what's happening in certain parts of this market and will always happen, which is that first of all, seeded dollars is an advanced collector issue.
Yeah,
This is not you don't collect seeded dollars in the first 5 years of your coin collecting. You're probably there in your 25th year. You've been doing this a long time. You did Morgans or peace dollars or you collected anything else. And now you got the seeded dollars and they're just wonderful coins. They're large. They're beautiful. I think when they're nice, they're beautiful and they're incredibly rare in gem, but they're not so rare, let's say in MS62 or MS63, where these things were banged up. I think they actually traveled on stagecoaches or God knows how they got from A to B. We didn't have FedEx in those days. So the coins got banged up and an MS65 seeded dollar should not have marks in the field, and that the coin is all field. It's
Right,
like
exactly. Yeah,
right,
it's like a Ike dollar. It's the whole thing is just
it's just
open.
field.
Yeah,
Open field. So and so what happens is if you kind of play this kind of market stretch game, the greatflation game, what happens is if a coin is a beautiful MS64, it's like you show it to five graders and they say 64, 64, 64. And then so you're like, okay, it's a lock 64. I'm going to submit it for 65 50 times. And that's what people will do. Why? Because the levels go from $5,000 to 50,000.
yeah,
Almost I can't think of another series of US coins that has such a dramatic jump from 64 to 65 as seeded dollars. That tells you one thing, they don't exist that nice. And there's a reason. So what happened is the collector of this collection, I think, kind of assembled I'm a price buyer, I'm not quality buyer. Um, and put together a set of coins that made just barely made the grade, let's say, and so the market spoke to that, and that's what people were concerned. I said, I get it. We have our ways of treating that. Beautiful seeded dollars are a whole different matter, and so other than that, I saw considerable strength in the market. I see plenty of pluses. I've seen some weaknesses, even in CAC. Not everything is immune from going up in price. And that's a
right.
good sign. We don't need this unbearably frothy market like we have in gold bullion right now, which is just scary because it just keeps
Yeah,
going up and up and up and up and up. So I think that's a good point, and we will continue to review these A&A sales over the next 30 days on pricing online and things like that. You'll start seeing as we continue to see how things do. Morgan dollars, very big area. Not the strongest.
yeah,
I've seen
right.
weaker. I've seen them be weaker. I had to minus a few things, especially MS65, 66 coins that have big spreads from 60. If a coin goes from $400 to 1,200 or 2,000, the $2,000 coin is probably coming down a little bit, is what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
right, right.
But
Yeah,
but in those cases, cat coins are holding up. I haven't seen weakness on a coin that was 2,000 in PCGS non-CAC and let's say 3,000 in PCGS CAC or CAC CACG. I'm not seeing weakness there. Are you?
right.
I haven't seen that.
No, yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Right.
it's clear that if the guy has if he wants it, it's within his budget to just buy the better coin, and so
Right.
it's those other coins are probably, like you said, going to wholesale or going to price buyers who are, they're canvassing the sale and just putting in bids at their lowest number, and some will, they'll hit some of them. So
Right, right. And it's still not unusual. If the seeded dollar example, it wouldn't surprise me to see a coin that's a gray sheet of 50,000 and a low end coin sells for 30,000. That isn't indicative of what the market, but then a CAC version of that coin, which is this ultra fussiest of all, could be 100,000. I mean,
yeah,
there's only one or two of these coins, and mostly they're all known. So they don't. It's not like tomorrow there's going to be a whole nother slew of gem seeded
right,
dollars.
exactly.
Although you never know. I mean, there's a new $1804, right? So I mean, I don't. Anything is
Yeah,
possible,
that
but
is true. Yeah,
everything is possible.
yeah,
Coins can be found and discovered and rediscovered. So it's pretty exciting stuff. Anyway, why don't you tell me a little bit about this space flown Sacagawea sale that was crazy.
yeah. I mean, I was obviously, it was heavily marketed by Stacks, and it was a quick auction, just a couple lots. But yeah, I was pretty floored by the price. Two of them broke $500,000. I did learn later on that, these coins have been known about by the community for a very long time, and it was just kind of a question of if and when they were ever going to be sold. I guess kind of like in a weird way, like the 70S, $3 gold piece, where everyone knew it was sitting there. Was it ever going
Hmm.
to sell? That type of thing. And so, there was a lot of built up demand, and people. It's been proven over and over again that modern rarities that are like considered by the modern community as being rare bring a ton of money.
Yeah,
And so, yeah, I was surprised by the price, but learning more of the backstory, and again, we've talked for many years now about this whole idea of crossover collecting. Guys who want the best of everything in all these different categories, whether it's art or stamps or paper money or comics. It very well could be those buyers are not even coin collectors, right? They're intrigued by something going to space, They're intrigued by that it's gold, all these different factors. So I wouldn't be surprised if at least a few of those went to non-coin collectors.
Yeah, I never could understand the excitement that is drawn by space flown items. Like I've just not been a space junkie myself.
Yeah.
So, but I remember when NGC certified like a medal a medal of no value, but I think it was the Neil Armstrong family estate, and that sold for I don't want to throw a number out there. Was it 500,000 or it was a lot? It was like
Yeah.
whoa, and it was just a space flown item, right? So these coins were at Fort Knox, I understand. So they were kind of
Yeah.
held as rare. I mean, it's a cool story. I
It
had
is.
someone complain to me that they thought there wasn't enough promotion about it before the auction. Well, clearly that didn't matter. Um,
No, yeah, that's
and
that.
and I also spoke to several dealers who thought they were going to be able to buy a few because they thought this was going to be a good play for them and promote. And I think I don't know who bought the coins. I don't know if you do, but
No,
I think everybody got smoked, in the dealer
totally.
community. I mean, at a
Yeah.
hundred thousand, I know this sounds flippant, but $100,000 a piece, you could buy some and then have fun with the marketing. At 500,000, I don't think so.
Totally.
Um,
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of like the platinum frosted freedoms. I mean, those sold for like what, 70, 80, 90, 100,000.
mhm,
And so you could do something like you said if those Sacagaweas were in around that same range. But yeah, going up
right.
to 300 plus. And it's funny you talk about space stuff. That's one of the things that one of my other passions, vintage watches. It's a huge space angle to that because of the Speedmaster and there's been some flown, watches owned by astronauts and they just bring like insane multiples of the equivalent watch that's not owned by a former astronaut. So it is a very interesting fascination that people have.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's beyond me. Hopefully, people will leave some comments and explain to me why it's interesting. But I do think that we can't deny its reality, right? And that's our job at Greysheet when we do pricing and think about values. It's not to interject our thoughts about what things should be. We just try to be representative of what they are.
Right.
But they're also, from a numismatic standpoint, these are the most recently created Judd pattern items and by Judd cataloging, and so that's exciting because I'm still working on the next edition of the Judd book with Saul Teichman and some others. So this is going to be. This seems
Yeah.
like the cover coin to me. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, for
It does.
sure.
It's not my. It's. I don't know. Is it? I mean, but it's amazing. For what you could get in patterns for $500,000, you could buy 100 different patterns for less than that total, and yet,
Yep.
yet people would prefer this. It's just fascinating. Let's move
Totally.
on. So let's talk about the effects of crazy bullion levels on coins in general in our sphere. So as we're going on today, gold is at 3,600 and change, and silver is around $40, and these levels are just incredible. I mean, gold's yeah, and I have to say, not being someone who tracks commodity markets, that the idea of gold at 4,000 is way more likely than gold at 3,000. So in other words, at the
Absolutely.
insane price of 3,600, I think hold on to your gold because it's going to get to 4,000. It might even get to 5,000 for all I can tell before it goes down. And remember, at 1,800, for the longest time, you and I would talk about $1,800 gold. Is it going to make it to 2,000? It just blasted through that, blasted through 3,000. I don't know. Gold is the new currency. What do you think?
Yeah, it's really insane to think about how long it took for gold to go from 1,000 to 3,000, that timeline, and then how quickly, comparatively speaking, it went from two to three. Like the timelines are just insane to compare, which is really, really telling on many fronts, which are way, beyond the scope of this little podcast. But I think for me, like I think back to my coin shop days where you would try and sell someone a St. Gaudens and they'd be like, well, why would I pay a premium compared to a 1 ounce gold eagle when in fact the Saint has a little bit less gold? And you're trying to explain to them, oh, there's a collectability there and there's numismatic value, blah, blah, blah. And now that's completely blown out of the water and reversed. Where if you walk into a coin shop now and you want to buy a silver eagle, it's going to cost you nearly $50. Meanwhile, you can buy a slabbed generic Morgan MS63 for almost the same price.
Hmm.
It's really interesting to think about that dynamic and how now I think if you're a dealer, it's kind of easier to be like, look, you can buy this roll of Silver Eagles, but how about five, Gem Morgans?
Right. It's wreaking some level of havoc on the market. It's good for the coin shop guys because they're getting but they're not making it on the sale. What
Right.
people don't quite realize is that no one is coming to their store saying, I want to buy silver and gold. I love its frothy high levels and I want to buy more of it.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to sell their silver and gold. And it's actually getting people out of a lot of bad deals. So if you bought like Silver Eagles when silver was 25 and you paid 35, you can get out, and the consumer doesn't see that spread differential of premium as a problem. They just say, okay, great, I'm out. And or I can get cash for I need cash today to pay for groceries, everything's going higher. So selling your silver and gold is very profitable. And the stores, their problem is they've got to get rid of it. And what's happened is we have this inverse reality where the coins are not worth their melt value anymore. Now, Silver Eagles, Gold Eagles are the standouts in that paradigm. But generally speaking, bags of 90% silver and things like that. I spoke with Ryan Carroll at Heritage recently, like a week ago, and I said, "Tell me about your thoughts." He's the head numismatist partner at Heritage, very huge trader, and he said, they're melting a considerable amount of the coins they're getting. They don't have a way to lay off, Sir Franklin's and things like that. So
Yeah.
they're melting it. And then believe it or not, it takes a while to get paid. So if you're Heritage, you probably have a pretty good arrangement with the smelter. But if you're a shop owner, you
Yeah.
can't wait 6 weeks to get paid. So these are important dynamics. So they sell it, of course, to Heritage. Heritage has a rocket check, Stacks Bowers or Spectrum Group, rocket check. So these become functionary middlemen, but these companies really have to melt the coins,
Yeah.
and they're not making their way into the hobby. And that's it's a crazy dynamic. But I can tell you the other problem here at Greysheet is we have reports, as you know, Patrick, we have these reports that say, hey, you say that the type coin of a barber dime is, and good is $4 or $5, right? Well,
Right.
that used to be a fixed number. That was always a fixed number because barber dimes were way ahead of Mercury dimes and Roosevelts and things
And
like
you would
that.
not think about melting
And
them.
you wouldn't think about melting them. But what's happened is our numbers for the AG and good and VG coins on all the series. I mean, we're not at seeded yet, right? But we're working our
Right.
way backwards. I just had to do Barber half dollars, where oh my goodness, um, we are below melt on Barber half dollars.
Which is
We
unthinkable.
did not think about that because we
Yeah.
have formulas in our system, so it automates. So I have to spend most of the time of the last 2 weeks on top of everything else we're doing here, fixing the formulas for circulated barbers to make sure that they're higher. And that happens for gold coins, that $2.50 gold pieces that are the better dates. So the common dates we always knew were worth some percentage of melt. But so when we fixed that, we're like, oh my goodness, the most common 1907 2.5 gold piece is now worth more than our 1854, because we didn't price that as a
Yep.
as a melt plus coin. We
Right.
just said that's worth something. So this has been a real challenge. But the good news is I think I'm done. I think I'm close. But every time silver goes up $2 or $3 more, I have a whole new series of problems. And I also recently had to do Morgans because Morgans were much higher than melt
Yeah.
until recently. And
Yeah.
now they're in the same boat. We're I don't know if we're melting Morgans yet, but we're probably melting the calls, and
Yeah.
we're gonna be in a situation where an O3S better day Morgan and VG is you know it's
The
kind of
same as an
worth melt less
81S.
or something. Right,
Yeah.
right. So the very interesting dynamic.
Yeah, it's wild. That's a good point that you made about pe collectors being able to get out of things. I mean, I'm sure you remember very well the days when like those 61 and 62 20 libs were being sold like by marketers for just insane, like way over what they were worth because of like this perceived rarity. But now that's finally caught up, and the guy who was upside down is now can sell it for what he paid or for more because of strictly just because of the bullion value, which is really really interesting. I remember working with a client who bought all this stuff from a telemarketer, and I was like, dude, they're like all those S Mint 20s, that were being traded, and I was like, you're way underwater on these things. It's going to be a while, and hopefully he waited long enough because now he's in a profit position just because of the gold price.
Right, right. The rising tide lifts all boats in this particular instance, and so correct. And I don't think that people, like I said, I don't think that the typical consumer is wounded by that reality. So it works well, and maybe to some degree, some of those people remain in the coin hobby and become collectors. I hope so. That
Right.
we never really know, what percentage of people who buy without a lot of knowledge continue in the hobby. But it's certainly been, if you were somebody hoarding, gold coins and things like that, you were in a great position, and I think you're
Yes.
still in a good position. I wouldn't be rushing for the exit, but it's not my place to say what I think gold is really going to do. I don't think anybody knows, but
Right.
but it's looking good. It's looking like this big momentum play that I think if it hits 5,000, I don't think you and I would be aghast by that.
No.
You know,
Yeah, exactly.
so
I'd be a little bit concerned of where the dollar's at that point, but that's that's a different story. Maybe not
right.
traveling as much. Um, One interesting thing, speaking of news and current events, you had a pretty cool experience recently, being interviewed on the PBS NewsHour about the penny. Well, what was that was I thought that was really cool, and I didn't even know about it until it came out. You did a good job keeping it under wraps. Uh,
Well, I forgot to tell you, to be honest, I forgot to even mention it because it came together with about 2 days' notice, that the PBS reached out to me. They found me in some Google search, and so the PBS NewsHour people said, "Hey, we want to run a story about the end of the penny, and people, we get a lot of attention when we run these stories. Would you be interested in talking to us?" And they happen to be in Arlington, Virginia, and I happen to be nearby a lot, in Northern Virginia. So I said, sure. I'd never kind of done that kind of thing, been to a national broadcast studio. And it was just a fantastic experience. I mean, they're extremely professional. I actually sat in the green room and got makeup applied to me, and spoke, I think, briefly about my philosophy on the I'll put a link in the message to the video, but it's like, my philosophy about why we're getting rid of the penny. It costs too much and nobody picks them up. I mean, this is pretty standard stuff for us collectors, but a lot of consumers are very nervous about
yeah.
what this means to them. And so I was trying to speak soberly about that because, there's a lot of sensational crap about this going around, right? Like, oh, your
Yeah.
pennies are going to be worth $1 million, and or you'll never be able to use them, so you better do something. And the reality is that pennies are pennies, and just because they don't make anymore doesn't mean you can't use them, but nobody
Right.
uses them.
Right.
So what's the
Exactly. They just sit.
difference? They sit in jars and everything. But I mean, we do sell an awful lot of I mean, we sell an amazing amount of, I don't know the number per year, tens of thousands of penny folders every year. We've, seconded by quarter folders and then things like that. So people love collecting pennies. I mean, if gold is 3,600, you know, you can put the whole penny collection and talk to your grandchildren about that and explain to them about what collecting is. It's such a great hobby to
Yep.
get away from the computer and social media. Let's talk about pennies and who this Lincoln guy is or whatever you're collecting.
Yeah.
So that was really fun, and then they didn't air it. So I recorded the thing. It was a really hot day. I was, sweating everywhere, and they said, "Oh, we're not going to air it tonight." And there's some reasons, but I can't explain that yet either. I mean, but there's some things hopefully developing in the whole story of the penny that will come out soon. So then they held the story. I went to
Oh.
Europe. I went to Europe for a week or two and forgot completely about it. And then one day I just started getting a couple emails, including from somebody named Feigenbaum who thought they were related to me. And and so I said, this must have aired. PBS didn't tell me they released it or anything. So I just
No
found out
kidding.
about it when I got
Yeah.
emails. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So this is the way the media works.
Yeah, so they just had it in the bank and then they just deployed that segment whenever they felt it fit.
And I would just say anecdotally, it was really kind of fun because the woman who interviewed me was incredibly professional, obviously a professional, knows podcaster. I could only dream of being this articulate, but she could not say the word numismatics. And
Ha.
we had to do 10 retakes on both my last name of Feigenbaum and then the word numismatics. And between the two of them, she was always tripping. and she made me nervous. So I was, if you watch this video, I'm kind of really deliberately trying to not get nervous because I wasn't nervous
Until you started doing it.
until she would say, "Okay, your name's Feigenbaum." No, it's I said, I don't care what you call me.
Yeah,
Just say it. And I don't won't even flinch. And she's like, "No, I want to say it right. Okay, Feigenbaum." Okay. And then so we would roll and she said, "Mr. Feigenbaum." And I was like, we didn't even hear that in the warm-up. So
right.
it's kind of like your golf swing, when your golf swing at the practice, you practice 4 times before you hit the ball, and every time you hit a fluid shot, and then your real swing is completely different.
Gone. Yep.
It's
Oh
gone.
yeah.
So her golf swing was like, her pronunciation was like my golf swing. Anyway, it was fun, and
Yeah.
I hope I don't blow it by talking about this way. It was very enjoyable, and I hope to represent the coin community wherever I can because it's fun, and somebody should do it. And there's
Yeah.
a lot of us that could. And
Well,
oftentimes
yeah.
they pick random people. You don't. Why would they pick that person?
That's
So
exactly what I was gonna say. Whether coins or even other like expert segments I watch on other things, they pick someone and I'm like, where do they find this person doesn't have a name or is not a known entity in the industry? How do they
mhm.
find them? And that's just because they don't know. So
Right, sure.
it's good
Or,
that we have a
or
representative.
geographically desirable, which I happen to be and local, which is way better than you and I have to do Zooms, and that's the way we work. But it's way better if you could be in a studio,
Right.
and I can powder the shiny head of mine.
Right.
So let's
Awesome.
so let's go from let's shift over from coins to paper money, and this is a subject I admittedly know nothing about. This is Patrick's area, and so please tell me what's going on in the world of paper money.
Yeah, so like the coins, we had some big auctions or one big auction from Stacks. And the takeaway, there was one really cool collection, actually a couple really cool collections that contained most of the big notes. The ones that really kind of went crazy in a good way were like some very cool like low serial number, like serial number one, serial number two, serial number three notes. And those are not good examples of the broad market, right? Because that's a very specific buyer who wants something like that, and they're high five figures, low six-figure items. But they do bring attention, and they're very cool from a historical point of view. And I've always very firmly believed that learning about stuff, even if it's beyond your budget, inspires you to collect and build your own collection. So I think that was good. I think the paper money market is not as white hot as it was a year ago, 2 years ago, because 2 years ago to 1 year ago, the demand was just crazy. Like every subsequent auction would beat the previous prices on notes from $200 all the way up, to 20 grand. That's definitely calmed down. It's leveled out. So I think the buyers who were really after things have fulfilled their wants and their needs and maybe are strategizing what to do next. But I also think there's a supply problem with US paper money. I think collectors who have nice collections are like, well, I want to keep collecting, I want to keep building, so I'm not going to consign my stuff. And so I think it's challenging for dealers and for guys who are in charge of consignments at these auction houses to pry material out of their hands. So I think that's an interesting dynamic. So that when really really interesting things do come out, there's enthusiasm for them.
Mhm.
So
It's always a rains it pours kind of thing. We get a drought, and then we have too many collections at once, and it's just always
exactly.
kind of works that way.
But I mean, again, demand is solid. The biggest issue by far still is this separation between the two grading services. So we have the two main grading services that we have in existence right now. Of course, PMG, which has the lion's share of the market, and then PCGS banknote. Of course, not to be confused with PCGS currency, the old green slabs. Now we have PCGS banknote has the white slab, and there's many reasons for this, but a lot of the PCGS currency notes have not been crossed over to PCGS banknote. But the ones that have, when they go to auction, they're just not able to achieve the same prices as the PMG notes. And I've
Hmm.
talked to many people about this, and I know guys that are buying notes and putting them in PCGS banknote holders to try and establish that market. And for whatever reason, it's just not getting there yet. And these are nice notes. So it's a really interesting like market psychology thing that we're dealing with. And for me, it makes pricing things really difficult in some cases because you'll have three notes two PMG, one 8,000, one 9,000, and a PCGS banknote for 5,000. So it's like, what's the price?
So are these the same, in your opinion, speaking generally, are these generally the same grades, the same criteria, quality notes? And it's just that the market isn't yet prepared to appreciate. PC just is a new entrant, is a
Right.
relatively new re-entrant. So as you're saying, PC just had licensed their name out to another grading company. They reacquired it, let's say 5 years ago, and they're now reestablishing as is the backstory. But
Yeah.
it's it's the old branding story, right? People love brands, and they just can't. It's so much more important to have a great brand than almost a great product. I mean, we see CAC as a grading company and coins coming in, and people just say, I would still prefer a PCGS coin with a CAC sticker than a CAC graded coin. It's not how
Yeah.
I feel, but that's how, what the market is still saying. And
No, yeah.
so are
And to
these the
answer your
same?
question, I was like, after a while, of seeing so many results, I'm like, I really got to figure out what's going on here. So I spent a lot of time looking at, the two notes. Like, are they missing something? But no, the notes are correctly graded for in 90% of the cases.
Mhm.
Whatever reason, the buyers are just not bidding.
So you would think that there's an arbitrage potential, right? Because this is what happens in coins. As soon as a coin is worth less than one holder, all these guys are going to compete in the wholesale market, the crackout guys, as we call them, and to cross them over. And are we seeing that? Is that what's happening?
What I've been told by numerous guys who know what they're talking about is PMG is being very, very stubborn to cross the notes.
Hmm.
They're basically saying,
And
well, even who knows what the graders think, but they're just not crossing it. And so it's some I've seen where a 66 downgrades to a 65 PMG and sells for more.
right, this is no, this is so ironic. It's like the reverse of what we see in coins, where PCGS coins typically sell for more than NGC coins at the high level, and then so there's been this arbitrage. Like I'll buy an NGC holder and cross it. There's a lot of guys make good livings that way,
Yeah,
but coins don't have the problem of serial number.
exactly.
So you can cut it out or you can cross it over in the holder, but either way, I would say PMG knows the graders at PMG can just look up the serial number and say, I already doesn't in or out of a holder, I know what this is.
Right.
And we're gonna and they can, they want to maintain the appearance of being the stricter company. And so therefore it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy or something that to that effect.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And then also you have collectors who have their notes that under no circumstances will they accept a downgrade. So they keep the note in the PCGS banknote holder and then they let it fly at auction and who knows where it goes. So it's just
Hmm.
it's an interesting thing. And I know people who are taking positions in PCGS banknote notes because they believe that they're nice pieces. Just somehow the market has to catch up or something has to happen because it's a really interesting thing and whether you're on the buy side or the sell side, you're going to have a different opinion of it. But I'll tell you right now, it's causing some really wacky data.
Hmm. I know that we have, this is again, it reminds me of the seated dollar problem. We do our best, Patrick and I, trying to interpret this data, put a number out there. But this is why we think it's so important that the website shows auction data so people can see for themselves what's going on in the market. We can throw a number out there and just say, okay, one sold for 8,000, one sold for 5,000 in a different holder. So we say it's worth 7,000 wholesale, and you can see what the auction data tells you. The auction data will always be an important part of this, and we just try to be as transparent as we can for the hobby's sake. um but I
Right.
feel for you, but you can feel for me as well, so it's
Yeah. I
it's,
mean,
it's
it's
the
all about the
challenge.
information is there. One thing that I can say though that I think is playing an impact is that for whatever reason, PCGS banknote on their website does not yet have a population
Mm,
or census data. So if you want to build like the finest known set of PCGS bank, you don't know where you're at.
right, that seems fundamental.
And I know that
uh
their infrastructure is
yeah.
there. I'm assuming why it's not public yet. I don't know, but I think if they did that, it would help the market for sure.
Yeah. So how, all right, so shifting gears a little to world paper money. What's the latest in that world?
You know, same thing. I mean, scarce notes are still bringing really, really nice money. I think there's a little bit of buyer's fatigue because before a world paper money auction was kind of like a really cool thing because there wasn't that many of them. So you'd get
Hmm.
really excited. You'd see all this cool stuff that you've never seen before or very rarely seen. And then the market started getting good. People started, more and more collectors around the world started accepting third-party grading, which took a really long time. And now we just have so many auctions constantly that I think there's a little bit of buyer's fatigue. And again, it goes back to that thing that I brought up earlier about if you're a collector, you got to pay sales tax, you got to pay shipping, you got to pay buyer's premium. You're like, wow, I mean, this is getting really expensive not common notes, but like, let's say you want to buy a note for $150. Well, after you get it to your house, it's 225. So
Right. Right.
it becomes more difficult and your funds don't go as far. So I mean I respect every auction house's desire to make money, but um, there's just a lot of material that's being offered month after month after month, and there's just not as many buyers as you'd think. I think for that type of stuff yet, even though the market, I mean, I think the collector base is always growing, but it's not nearly as sophisticated as we have in coins.
Yeah, I find that very surprising that's true. You know, I know we have the MIF coming up soon in Maastricht, in another few weeks. I think that they're coming up, and that's the
Yeah.
big paper money show. Um, but it's, yeah, that industry hasn't grown the way I hoped it would. To be fair, but maybe it's time will come. Maybe I don't know. Is it a problem that now you might have if you're buying world paper money? Do you have to ship it across? Is there, now with all the kind of import
Yes.
issues, that's got to be impacting, and that would impact world coins. That would impact world coins as well, but it certainly can't help in any regard.
You're correct. Yeah, that's a huge issue. A lot of auctions happen in London, a lot of auctions happen in Hong Kong. So, trying to get that stuff to your door, you're paying all kinds of higher fees now. Um,
Hmm.
and I think, I'll beat this horse for a while, is that world paper money has an information problem still, right? There's a lot of inaccurate cataloging, which of course we're trying to solve with our product, the banknote book. There's you can buy what we call the native catalog. So if you want to collect, banknotes from Uruguay, you can buy the book that's published by the guy in Uruguay and look at his pricing. But is that applicable if you go to a show in Europe? All these types of things that there's just an information problem from a pricing point of view and from a cataloging point of view. And again, not to call anyone out, but there was a world banknote recently in an auction that had the wrong country and pick and catalog number on the slab tag, and that wrong information was repeated again by the auction house in the lot description, and the
Hmm.
note sold for $18,000. I mean, think about having an $18,000 US coin with the wrong NGC slab or PCGS slab tag with the wrong date, the wrong
Right.
denomination, and then the auction house repeating that wrong information. That's
So what's that worth? That item, without, correctly identified?
Well, it's worth $18,000, but we're just not sure if the guy I mean, it's very probable that the guy who was bidding knew
Oh, okay. Okay,
the
good. I
note.
just I just want to, kind of feel good about that, because the grading services will not make you whole on what they call a mechanical error.
Right.
And they consider it a mechanical error if they put the wrong country or the wrong date on, they say this is an 1847 seated half dollar and it's an 1846. They're not going to make you good on that. They'll
Yeah.
say, listen, we're not perfect. We do our best. So, but if
But
the
when it's the wrong country also, that I mean to me, I mean, look, the two notes in question look very similar, but
yeah,
there's different wording.
right.
My thing is that the catalogers at the auction house should have sent that note back to PMG to be corrected before they put it in the auction.
Sure, sure.
So,
And they didn't see it, or they would have noted it. But
and
but
that goes back to my point that there's so many notes that they're processing
right,
just all the time that those types of things happen.
right. So we'll have to get to that technology, which I dream of, and we're not far. We're actually, it's just on our list of many things to do, which is to add recognition of banknotes, of coins, so that maybe these auction companies would just take a picture of the note. It would say, look, this is a banknote book from Uruguay, and it's a banknote book 732 or 733. We can't quite tell, and then it would raise a red flag for everybody. And and I think we know the technology exists. We just haven't had a chance to apply it. We are working on like 40 things at once at Greysheet. That's one of the really exciting things that we could close out with, is just talk about some of the technology and the things we've been doing behind the scenes, and why I haven't had time to do many podcasts. Patrick and I have been busy.
Yeah.
He's working on editing umpteen books with Whitman, and I've been working on trying to get technology to help him so that we don't have to reinvent this wheel every time. Um, we've just released, Patrick, we just released in beta something that if you're a dealer watching this video and you have any technological savvy on your own, we have released an API that's the first time in this industry, to my knowledge, that anybody has done something like this. Our entire catalog, our index, from banknote book, world paper money, US coins, Friedberg number, US notes. We're working on world coins, so it grows incrementally, but almost all the other ones are very complete. And you can use an API and say, I'm going to build a website, or I'm going to build a back-end inventory system based on the Greysheet ID. So if you bought a 2026 Red Book, you see these Greysheet IDs. We're applying those identification systems into all the books Patrick's publishing at Whitman. And so this is now available by API. And great news, if you use the API to know the catalog ID, now you can use the Greysheet pricing API to get the value, and you can use that. Now we don't want you to publish wholesale numbers on your website, but you can publish the retail price guide numbers. And you can say, look, we're selling this item for $400. The Red Book price, or the CPG price, the retail price is 380. That's, or often we'll be right at the market. We're not pricing guides way too high. That's not our game. We can, we know there's a number of websites that will tell you things that are worth too much money. We try to be right on. And so anyway, that API is available for people in beta. You can send us an email, send us an email to find it. You can check it out. And then we're also working on a brand new website at Greysheet, like a whole new revamp of our website. It's just amazing the amount of information we have, and trying to learn to present that effectively.
Yep.
You know.
Yeah, and I'm very excited about the 2.0 version of Seed and Exchange, which of course is our dealer platform, which is a very powerful tool that a lot of dealers already utilize. But I think with the new interfaces and just the amount of, again, as you say, the amount of data that's available there, it can be used, it can be deployed if you're a dealer in so many ways. And it has a marketplace component where your inventory can live there, and people can see it, and it's just another place where you can have your inventory in a visual way.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's just there's just a lot of great things that we're working on. We're trying. It just happens to be that Patrick and I love technology, and we love numismatics a lot. So much so that we keep talking about maybe getting into some other collectible, and we never do, because we're still peeling back the layers of this onion of coins and paper money. So until we perfect it, we're not moving on. But right now is an exciting time here at Greysheet and Whitman, and if you haven't been following all these great books that we've been publishing, what's a book that tell us a couple books you published in the last 30 days, even, Patrick.
Oh yeah, I mean, these are of course not on the shelves yet because they're still in the production and shipping process. But I think the newest ninth edition to Guidebook of Morgan Dollars, which classic series, but has a lot of added information that wasn't there before. That's just a really, really handy reference that gives you a great combination of pricing data, but also obviously a ton of historical context. We have the Red Book series of type coins, which again we've talked about many times. Type coin is like the quintessential way to collect, and this book will help you build just a really killer type coin collection, I think. And again, much more thorough in the data that's presented, as far as the pricing, more grades, more nuance, more granularization of the pricing. Um, and then what else? I think a really cool book, for coming up for Christmas time is we have a book called Kids Love Coins. So it's literally a children's book to get them, into and excited about coin collecting, or just even the awareness of that coins can be collected, which I think, everyone should give their kid for Christmas.
Sure,
So
sure. Like I said, I mean, it's, in this world, what can we do to impart this hobby that we love? If you're watching this video this long, you love this hobby, and getting other people enthused is a big deal. But we've just had a blast working on, Whitman products and books and albums and folders and things like that. We could just go on and on. How many different things we're working on? Life is not dull for us.
yeah.
So, and then of course, what I've been working on the most is Mega Red. Mega Red, we paused when we acquired the company because we're like, oh my God, this is a huge effort. It's about 1,500 pages. And when we paused it, we learned how many people love it. And so we had lots of people who want this book. So that's coming. I think hopefully we're going to go to the press with the Mega Red in the next, by the end of October,
Mhm.
which is just an amazing thing. And it's going to be the best ever because first of all, we're going to what we're doing is we're replacing a lot of the auction data that really didn't matter. They had auction data for items that were many years out of because it was too hard to assemble by hand.
Yeah.
So what we did was we said, if it's not $100,000 auction, go online and find out more about that item. So
Yep.
what we've done is we're just leaving those highest dollars in, and then we've added all the varieties for about, I don't know, 5 to 10 of the major catalogs that we all know and love, whether it's Cohen, Newcomb, Sheldon Numbers, Overton. We're gonna do something called the Mega Red 100 for VAMs because we feel like it's confusing to know which is the best or the most interesting 100 VAMs. There's been multiple lists, so we're going to try to standardize a Mega Red 100 list there. I'm sure we'll get a lot of flack for that. The VAM people are very passionate, and we
Yes.
love them for their passion. And they might not love me for coming up with my new list, but that's what we're going to do. So we're coming up with all this new stuff, and please stay tuned and keep watching and comment. Do whatever you can on this video. Please subscribe to our video page. We are working hard to do more videos. And if you're someone who likes to create videos about numismatics, about let us know. We're looking for
Yeah.
content creators. We're interested in all of these new facets of this industry. So please keep in touch with us and tell a friend. Have a great day. Thank Patrick. Really appreciate you taking time. We
Of
put this
course.
together a very short time
No, it's
because,
enjoyable.
yeah, we just need to talk about this stuff. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.